Alright, so I feel like this course would not be complete if I didn't show you how to do cigarette smoke. So actually we're using particles, drag particles to be precise, to create this look, because this kind of a wispy smoke with all this little detail is very hard to get with regular smoke. Basically we are emitting drag particles, and if you have enough particles in there, they're gonna end up looking like smoke and create this wispy look. So let me show you how that is set up. First, you can go on TurboSquid and just search for free cigarette, and you can find this pretty nice free cigarette model, which is exactly what I used in my scene here. Then I'm not emitting the smoke out of the cigarette just to avoid the whole polygon ID thing. Instead, I just made a cylinder and I'm emitting the smoke out of this little cylinder here. So then you would just create a Phoenix source like we did many times and make the cylinder your source. I did outgoing velocity of 10 centimeters with 1500 temperature, 1.0 for smoke, and then most important thing here, enable particles, set the type to drag, and you can emit 5,000 particles. So this is in seconds. So every second, which is for me right now 24 frames, it'll emit 5,000 particles. Generally speaking, the more the better, because as you can see toward the end here, you can begin to see the individual points. It stops looking like smoke and it just begins to look like particles. So the more particles you have, the less likely that it's gonna actually look like points and it's gonna look more like smoke. So I would maybe raise this to 10,000 or higher, but just be aware that it can start taking quite some time to simulate all of that. So for the lifespan, that's something that you can play with depending on how long you want the smoke to live. I think in the real world, the smoke would not dissipate as fast as it does for me here. It would last longer. So you could maybe make the lifespan, 5 seconds or more, depending on, again, the kind of effect that you want. But for now, I'm gonna do 2.5 seconds lifespan with half a second of lifespan variation, so that some of the smoke dies sooner than other parts of it, right? You get this randomized look, and everything else here can stay the way it is. Now, basically the way we're giving the smoke this random motion is with the turbulence helper. Basically, I'm doing just 22 for strength and 750 centimeters for size. So pretty big size, it is not exactly to scale. You can see that the cigarette is about 30 centimeters long, which is about 3 times the size it would be in real life, maybe 4 times, right? So it's a little bit larger, but you really want just that kind of a subtle, turbulent look that's gonna just very, very subtly change the direction of the smoke over time. I think it could be actually even more subtle than this. So I would maybe make the strength just 15, and you could make the size maybe 850 or 1000, just to get like a more subtle movement in the smoke. Now for the dynamic settings here, I'm doing 0.3 for cooling. So remember that it has a temperature of 1500, which is making it rise up. But as it cools down, it'll just begin to linger in place. You see, it just sort of stops up here and it doesn't rise anymore. And that's because of the cooling. The cooling cools down the temperature and makes the particles linger in place. So that's an important parameter here. Conservation PCG symmetric with 50 quality. And one more important thing, we completely turned off vorticity. So vorticity is 0 and there's no massive vorticity whatsoever as well. Because really the only movement that we want is caused by the turbulence. There's no massive vorticity or vorticity of any kind breaking the smoke. It's only the turbulence doing so. So under output, as always, you can check velocity for motion blur, and I'm actually gonna just set the strength of the turbulence to 0 and run the simulation and show you what that will look like. So as you can see, without any turbulence in the scene, the smoke is just gonna keep rising straight up. So I just wanted to show you how that works. So we can set the strength back to maybe 20 to get that movement back in there. Now, after you have your simulation done, if you hit render, nothing will show up because you need to create the particle shader first. So you can use this yellow shortcut here, Phoenix FD create a particle shader, and just make that in your scene. And you can click add and just click on the Phoenix grid, and you can just say yes for that, and select the particles as the particle system and say okay. Then this is where you actually control the color. So if you wanted to render it red, you could just select red color here, but we're gonna make it almost pure white. You can set the count multiplier here to a high value. So I did 15. So during rendering, it will actually multiply the amount of particles by 15, and that will really help to get this kind of a nice smoke look. Because again, if you don't have enough particles in the scene, it's just gonna look like particles and not like smoke. So you really need a lot. You need hundreds of thousands to make this look good. So I would raise this pretty high up. I did 15, you can go even higher. And then I just did a few V-Ray lights, hit render. Let me show you what this looks like. So this is what that render will look like, really super simple. You can use this technique for any kind of a wispy smoke effect, or even ink in water. If you were to set the temperature to a negative value, the smoke will basically just go down and it'll look like ink in water. So you can open the project file. As always, it's right under the video, and look at my settings if you would like. We've already covered, you know, turbulence, source, all that before. So really the only new thing is emitting drag particles instead of smoke. So as always, hope that you guys found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next lesson.